guys out there let me know out of the kindness of your heart that my mic was a little bit low. Made some adjustments to my equipment, turned it up a little bit, so hopefully this is working just a little bit better than what it was last time. As always, still trying to get this situated, still trying to learn the ins and outs of streaming. Of course, y'all guys know my background. I come from radio, so that audio stuff shouldn't be an issue, but it's all the other components that go along with it that tend to sometimes trip me up. But hopefully I got everything good. Make sure to get on in. James Espinosa's show. We're here, and I'm fresh off of vacation. As you can see in my video, and if you're listening along on the podcast, I'm rocking my new Austin FC hat that I bought at the Q2 Stadium. Just a real quick aside before I dive into today's topics, which include Tony Pollard playing on the franchise tag, are running backs dead in the NFL, and Dak Prescott's interesting comments about his interceptions from last year. Quick aside about Austin FC. One of the best sporting environments I've ever been to. And I've been to a lot, guys. Cowboys, Spurs, Astros, been to Rangers games, covered big-time college football games, covered big-time high school football games here in the state of Texas, been to WrestleManias, etc., right? Done all that. Austin FC, Q2 Stadium, if you're a sports fan, even if you're not a soccer fan, but if you're a sports fan out there, I'm giving this my endorsement the whole way. It is an absolute amazing place to catch a game. It is one of the most intense atmospheres I've ever been to. I'm talking about from the pregame all the way till the end, all 90 minutes. The crowd is on their feet. The crowd is chanting along. Their supporter section is just so high energy that it really involves you in the game. Even if you don't follow the team that much, or even if you're not the biggest soccer fan, I will recommend hitting up Q2 Stadium. If you're a sports fan out there, if you live in Texas, if you're in Austin, if you're in the surrounding area, wherever you might be, I recommend you going and checking that place out, because damn it, man, I had myself a hell of a time. I was yelling, I was standing. Austin scored a couple of goals early, which really got the place rocking. And then, of course, I'm slamming a few brewskis on the way. So it was just amazing. So Q2 Stadium in Austin, Austin FC, one of the best live sporting events that I have ever been to. And I definitely give it the James Espinosa Show recommendation. So make sure you guys go on and check that out if you have a chance. If you ever do have an opportunity, make sure you get out there. All right, Cowboys news. Let's get to it. Tony Pollard is going to be playing on the franchise tag for roughly $10 million this season. The Cowboys and Tony Pollard failed to extend his contract for a long-term deal, and Tony Pollard will be playing on the franchise tag. Now, what does that mean, guys? In my opinion, this is what the Cowboys are setting up to do. And I think the Cowboys are right by not extending Tony Pollard. Now, you got to remember that Tony Pollard, of course, last year, it's been documented, right? He got a lot of run, got a lot of play, did very well. He's coming off of that injury, broke his leg, fractured his ankle in the NFC divisional round against the 49ers, and that was kind of the turning point of the game. A lot of Cowboys fans will go on and say that if Tony Pollard doesn't get hurt, the Cowboys might win that game. Well, possibly, but as always with sports, that's just a big if, right? We won't ever know if that would have happened. But he's back. He's going to be on the franchise tag, and I believe Dallas is setting up this strategy. And I think Dallas learned from the mistake of the Zeke contract is that you don't extend running backs anymore, guys. You just don't. You don't do it. You don't give big money to running backs in this league. And we saw it yesterday. We saw it with Jacobs out of Oakland. We saw it with Saquon Barkley out of the New York Giants. We're even seeing it with Austin Eckler, who's still a free agent and who requested a trade. Teams are not going to give these running backs the money anymore. It's not a running league. Year after year, the passing numbers are going up in the NFL. This is a passers league. Running backs are now complimentary. You don't need a bell cow back anymore to be successful in the NFL. A lot of teams are implementing this running back by committee approach. And I think that's what Dallas is going to do from here on going forward. Now with Tony Pollard, will he be back next year? Let's say Tony Pollard has a hell of a season. Over 1,200 yards rushing, a few hundred yards receiving, double-digit touchdowns, then yeah, you could probably entertain maybe signing him to a small-term deal. But I truly believe that the Cowboys are setting up to potentially release Tony Pollard next year, and then draft another young running back, and then use that running back for 4 or 5 years, and then franchise tag him, and then cut him, and then draft another running back, and keep finding running backs that can complement, because that is the way of the NFL now, guys. And I've been screaming this for years. When Zeke was coming up on his first contract back in 2019, I was on the side that the Cowboys should not give big money to Ezekiel Elliott. Back in the day, what I was saying is that the Cowboys should franchise Zeke and then franchise him again and then eventually cut him, because second contracts for running backs just typically don't work out. They just typically do not work out. So, is the running back dead in the NFL? I wouldn't say it's necessarily dead. I will say it's still important for a team to have a great running game, but you don't need just one guy anymore. You need about 2 or 3 of them. You need what the Chiefs are doing. You need what the Eagles are doing. There's a lot of teams out there right now that are using this running back by committee. And who did the Cowboys have right behind Tony Pollard this year? I mean, you're looking at Ronald Jones. You're looking at Malik Davis. You're looking at Rico Dowdle. You're looking at the 6th-round pick, Deuce Vaughn. Those guys are going to be there to complement Tony Pollard. It's going to be sort of a running back by committee this year for Dallas, with Tony Pollard leading the way. Just don't expect Tony Pollard to be the bell cow back. All of those guys are probably going to get a little bit of run at some point or another for the Dallas Cowboys. So, Tony Pollard becomes the 6th player in Cowboys franchise history to play on a franchise tag, joining Flozell Adams back in 2002, Anthony Spencer in 2012 and 2013. They did it twice to Spencer. DeMarcus Lawrence in 2018, and Dak Prescott in 2020, and also Dalton Schultz last year in 2022. The Cowboys, of course, went on to sign Adams, Lawrence, and Prescott to long-term extensions in each of the respective following off seasons. The other guys were eventually let go. So, I don't like it for Tony Pollard. I feel sympathy for the running back, because they are essentially used. They are essentially worn out by the time their rookie contract is over, and then they just kind of become journeymen, and they never truly get to cash out. And it's going to be very hard for teams going forward to legitimately justify why they should pay a running back big-time money when the numbers suggest that you don't need a running back that's making big-time money to win a Super Bowl. Now, here's an interesting stat, and I got a few of them here that I'm going to kind of rattle off and talk about, involving running backs, involving money, and involving winning Super Bowls. Since 2013, no Super Bowl winning team has paid its leading rusher more than $2.5 million, and the average salary of the leading rusher on the past 14 Super Bowl teams is just $1.4 million. $1.4 million is the average salary of the leading rusher on the last 14 Super Bowl teams. $1.4 million. And when teams start looking at all this data, when teams start compiling almost a decade or 2 decades worth of that data, they're saying to themselves, we don't got to pay these guys anymore the way we used to. This ain't the 1980s. This ain't the early 1990s with Emmett and company. It's now a quarterback league. Quarterbacks, wide receivers, defensive ends, cornerbacks, they are making the money now, and these running backs are a victim of that. Another interesting note, who was the last 1,000-yard rusher to win a Super Bowl? Let y'all think about that real quick. Who was the last 1,000-yard rusher to win a Super Bowl? That would be LeGarrette Blount, and it happened back in 2016 with the Patriots. So what is that? Going on 7 or 8 years since a 1,000-yard rusher won a Super Bowl. Now, who was the last Hall of Fame running back that led a Super Bowl winner in rushing? Another interesting note that I found yesterday. The last Hall of Fame running back that led a Super Bowl winning team in rushing was Marshall Faulk in 1999. 1999. The last time a Hall of Fame running back led a Super Bowl winner in rushing. Now, you got to go back all the way to Emmitt Smith in 1995 for the last time a Super Bowl winning team, a Super Bowl leading rusher, had played more than 5 seasons for one particular team, and that's Emmitt Smith. Emmitt Smith was the last leading rusher on a Super Bowl team that played more than 5 seasons with that team back in 1995. Guys, the numbers are staggering when it comes to the running back, okay? The last 8 Super Bowls, so 16 lead running backs, 5 of them rushed for 1,000 yards, 6 ranked in the top 10 in rushing, 3 ranked higher than number 8 in rushing, and the last 5 running backs not named Derrick Henry to rush for 1,500 yards missed the playoffs. No rushing champion in the Super Bowl since 2005, and that was Shaun Alexander with the Seattle Seahawks. Guys, NFL teams are seeing these numbers, and they're justifying it and saying, we don't have to have the bell cow back. We don't have to pay these guys what others think they should be getting paid. Now, of course, you had a lot of running backs yesterday, this past week, come out on social media saying how this ain't right, saying how, essentially they're getting used up, banged up, and getting spit out of the league. And they've been on social media and they've been campaigning for it, but it's going to take some kind of monumental shift in NFL philosophy in order to go back to a pure running style attack on offense. And I just don't see that happening for a few years, guys. The NFL is a flat circle, and there will be a time whenever offensive innovators start running the ball a lot more, and what's old will be new again, so to speak. But I don't think we're going to see that for quite some time, and a lot of these running backs right now are definitely suffering from the effects of that. So a lot of stats that support why you don't need a running back. Not don't need a running back, but don't need a top high-paid running back to be successful in the NFL and to win Super Bowls. I will repeat one more time this last stat. Since 2013, no Super Bowl winning team has paid its leading rusher more than $2.5 million, and the average salary of the leading rusher on the past 14 Super Bowl teams is just $1.4 million. You don't got to pay these guys to be successful in the NFL anymore. These guys are now, they're weapons, but they're not integral. They're not a reason why your salary cap should be tied up. And if you're the Dallas Cowboys in particularly, you don't got to pay your running back because you got contracts coming up. You got Trayvon Diggs' contract coming up. You probably have a Dak Prescott extension coming up. You got a CeeDee Lamb contract coming up. You got a Terrence Steele contract coming up. You're going to have a Micah Parsons contract coming up. And if that portion of the salary cap is tied into your running back room, you're doing yourself no favors. That's one of the reasons why the Cowboys couldn't bring back Amari Cooper, was because Zeke Elliott was making too much damn money. And his play, his production didn't justify that. So, these NFL teams got a lot of questions to answer. When you got to pay your quarterback, your receiver, your cornerback, your defensive end, those guys are going to come first before the running back ever does. Hell, your tight end will come before the running back. Like the way we saw Evan Ingram yesterday sign an extension with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He signed a 3-year extension. Meanwhile, Saquon Barkley and company, Tony Pollard, Josh Jacobs, they can't get an extension. The tight end even comes before the running back now. Just think about that, guys. Things have changed in the NFL, and it is no longer running back centric. These current guys are a dying breed. Moving on. Dak Prescott had some comments yesterday about his interceptions. Well, this past weekend, I should say. Dak Prescott was speaking at a youth camp and discussed Mike McCarthy's impact on the passing game. And then he also went into some of his interception totals, and Dak Prescott had this to say. Quote from Dak Prescott: "You can go back and take away half of those drops," Prescott said. "I'm not saying it's on the receiver, but if you cut that in half, then we start talking about those. Nobody is talking about it." End quote. Kind of an interesting comment from Dak, because he's saying you can go back and take away half of those on drops, and then in the next sentence he says, "I'm not saying it's on the receivers." Then who's it on? Dak? Is it on you? Or is it on the receiver who dropped the ball? In essence, Dak, you're kind of blaming the receivers right there. I mean, that comment is kind of contradictory to what you're trying to say. So Dak Prescott, of course, everybody made a big deal saying that Dak Prescott said he wasn't going to throw more than 10 interceptions. No, he didn't say that. He said that if there's not tips, then there won't be more than 10 interceptions. It was taken out of context, but that's what a lot of these talking heads like to do. Now, Dak Prescott also said this about Mike McCarthy's impact on the passing game. Quote, "They know where the hell to be. why to be, and when they're getting looked at. That's going to be a big jump, I think. We won't have those tipped interceptions this year, end quote. So they know where the hell to be, why to be, and when they're getting looked at, that's going to be a big jump, Dak Prescott said. To me, that's a shot at Kellen Moore and his offense. And Kellen Moore did take a lot of heat later on in the season, and people have broken down the Kellen Moore film and have said, hey, those routes were elementary. You had guys running 4 routes to the sticks, nobody getting open, guys just running basic intermediate routes, no kind of, concepts behind them. Yeah, Dak Prescott took a shot at Kellen Moore right there in that comment. Subtly. Might not have meant to do it, but that's what I'm reading into it. And I think that's what a lot of people are too, saying that the receivers, quote, will know where the hell to be, why to be, and when they're getting looked at, that's going to be a big jump, I think, end quote from Dak Prescott. So just some interesting comments on Dak right there on his interceptions and the offense of Mike McCarthy. Cowboys camp does open up here in about 8 days or so, and I'm excited about that. I'll be bringing some more Cowboys coverage with that. So there we go. Over under 9.5 interceptions for Dak Prescott this season. That's going to be one of our questions to answer here. If you want to answer it in the chat, go ahead. I will get to you guys as quickly as I can. Even whenever the video, when the recording finishes, feel free to leave a comment on that. So over under 9.5 interceptions for Dak this season. I'm going to go over. I just think I'm going to go over, guys. Dak, out of the 7 years that he's played as a starting quarterback, 4 of those 7 years, he has thrown 10 or more interceptions. Look, in the NFL, with the amount of passing they do, it's just hard, man, to get under 10 interceptions. You got to be really, really accurate, really, really elite. Not saying that Dak ain't any of those, but 10 interceptions, look, you can't blame the guy if that happens. Now, if he leads the league again in interceptions, then we're going to have to ask some more questions about Dak Prescott going forward, but I don't think he will. I think he's going to bounce back. I think he's going to have a pretty good year interception-wise. I'll go over 10, but I'll go under 15 for Dak Prescott interceptions. I'll probably go about 12, maybe 13 at most, the way I'm feeling right now on Dak Prescott. But all that's yet to be determined, of course, with Mike McCarthy's new offense for the Dallas Cowboys. And I cannot wait to see it. Cannot wait to see it. Cannot wait to hear things about practice, watch some film on that, watch some video, and, of course, whenever the preseason games start and the regular season. So there we go. Interesting comments from Dak. It's kind of blaming the receivers, kind of taking a little subtle shot at Kellen Moore. Read between the lines a little bit. It sounds like Dak Prescott's a little bit frustrated with all the talk on the interceptions from last season. Hopefully Dak Prescott can do something about it and shut everybody up. Definitely. All righty, that's going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of the James Espinosa Show. Just wanted to get my thoughts on Tony Pollard. $10 million on the franchise tag. I think the Cowboys are setting up to potentially release him next year and draft another running back and keep the cycle going like that, the way it is in the NFL. NFL running backs, are they dead? They're definitely on life support, and a lot of these running backs are upset about that, but that's just the way it is. You don't pay these guys a lot anymore when you have other positions of greater need to the team. You heard all the stats right here in this recording. You heard all the stats right here in this podcast. It supports what NFL teams are thinking, and until somebody can buck that trend, that's the way it's going to go for these running backs. And Dak Prescott, little bit frustrated, it seems, with the talk around his interceptions. All right, I'll be back on Thursday. Gonna have some more content for you. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, Sports Rush Media on YouTube. Follow me on all social media platforms, Sir Edward James. And then, of course, the podcast is also on all podcasting platforms. The James Espinosa Show. Search James Espinosa Show. Give it a follow. Give it a rating. I would appreciate all of that so much. All right, I am out. I'll talk to you guys later on. Have a great rest of your day. Peace.